Welcome, everybody. Podcast number 440. And today I'm super excited to have as a guest on the show, Mr. Matt Durian. He is the CEO of the B&B Way, which is Western North Carolina's premier Airbnb property management and concierge company. I think that's an awesome tagline, by the way, very clear. And we are talking today about Matt's journey in hospitality, but also his journey going from a hectic host to a rising star through our Legends X program, which Matt just finished. So we'll explain what that all means. But first of all, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I've been watching your podcast for many years and following you, and I am very happy to be here, Jasper.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to dive in because obviously we already know each other a little bit through Legends X, but I've never really understood your entire story of how you got started and your background in hospitality. So I'm excited to get into it and then really talk about like what does a life of a hectic host look like. We'll explain what that means and how did you get out of that position and what's next for you as well. So, but yeah, let's start with your story, the B&B Way. I love that name. Like, how did you get started with Airbnb and hospitality in general?
So, Jasper, my history in the hospitality industry, it goes back a few years before actually Airbnb even existed. So in 1999, after I graduated from Kent State University up in Ohio, I decided that I wanted to move to Southwest Florida just to be by the ocean and to do that bartending thing by the beach for a while until I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. So I ended up getting a job at a luxury resort community in Naples, Florida, making drinks for the wealthy residents that live there. And just by getting to know the people that lived at this community, it didn't take me very long to understand that there were some opportunities to solve some problems and to add some value to what these residents were dealing with. And really because the people that lived at this place only were coming down to their properties during the winter season. And so 6 months out of the year, they were empty. And so what these people really needed was like a boots on the ground type of property management service, someone that would go in and make sure that there was no water leaks and make sure that the air conditioning was always circulating. But more importantly, when they came back down to Florida, they would need to have their condos cleaned and prepared for their arrival. They would need to have an airport shuttle service, services like that. So in my mind, it was endless the amount of opportunities here that I could add some value. And so when you think of a five-star hotel like the Ritz-Carlton, for example, they've got a concierge on site that handles and does anything and everything from making dinner reservations to suggesting fun activities to do in the area. And so my idea was to take that concierge concept out of the hotel and to offer personal concierge services to the residents of these gated communities throughout the Naples market. And so that's when I launched my first business, Infinite Services, the concierge company. And really my business had grown very, very quickly. We were managing and providing personal concierge services for up to 50 properties at one time. So I was this young entrepreneur, living the dream, living by the beach. Life was really good. I was making a lot of money. But then my dream soon kind of faded with the real estate crash of 2007, 2008. And so my business within a matter of months dwindled down to really just a handful of properties and clients. And so because of the state of the economy at that time, I was forced to sell what was left of my business. And so that was a very, very difficult time in my life. Everything that I had built had kind of collapsed. It had happened so quickly. But during this time, kind of interestingly enough, randomly, a guy that I had met at this resort in Naples reached out to me and he offered me a position at his company selling satellite communication technology of all things. I could barely spell satellite at the time, but I didn't really have many options. So I decided to take him up on his offer. And I would end up working in the SATCOM industry for the next 13 years, building a successful business and ultimately becoming one of the owners. And so fast forward to 2019, my wife Bruna and I, we had been living in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina for years. And we just really loved traveling. We loved, actually, I think it's fair to say that we were addicted to the Airbnb platform as travelers. And so it was at that time that I saw an ad online for how to grow an Airbnb business without buying any properties. And so this really intrigued me. I didn't say anything to Bruna at the time, but in the back of my mind, I thought, you know, it would be really cool to get back into this hospitality business, something that I had really missed. And so I ended up buying this course, which really focused on the rental arbitrage model or the master leasing model. I dove right in and I started reaching out to property owners and landlords off of Facebook Marketplace. And it was just a matter of a couple of weeks, I ended up having an agreement in hand from a property owner that would give me permission to list her cottage on Airbnb. So officially, I was back in the game, and I even had talked my wife Bruna into helping me stage and furnish the property, which would end up becoming one of her superpowers. So this first property was really our beta test, right? We had learned so much just through trial and error. And I knew that we could set ourselves apart in the marketplace just from my time being in the concierge business. I knew that we could set ourselves apart by really over delivering on the customer support side. So really going above and beyond and making sure that these people were well cared. Not only were we providing a comfortable account for personal concierge services, just like a 5-star hotel. So that strategy worked really well. We were flooded with 5-star reviews, which created more demand for the cottage. It meant that we could raise prices and then maintain higher than average occupancy rates in a really competitive market. Jasper, just to give you some perspective, we were paying $1,250 in rent, but we were generating over $6,000 on Airbnb per month. So it was really mind blowing. Over the course of the next year, when COVID hit, we kind of realized that this rental arbitrage model, this master leasing model, was a little bit too risky for our comfort level. So we switched to the management model. We ended up hiring a coach, and then in the next 4 months or so, we brought on an additional 6 properties to our portfolio that were scattered all throughout Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. So, you know, it was great. We were growing, we were bringing on listings, which is what we really wanted to do. But we soon realized that, you know, we were really vulnerable. We didn't have any systems to speak of. We didn't have any real vision of where we wanted to take our business. You know, there were many days where Bruna was off at one property cleaning because a housekeeper didn't show up. I was an hour away at another property dropping off supplies and sort of trying to manage the guest communication and dealing with our clients. It was so overwhelming. Our heads were just always buried, and we could really never escape and work on our business because we were so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. If we didn't make any changes, we were going to be stuck. We needed to do something so that we could start adding on more properties, because if we were going to be continuing operating our business that way going forward, there was no way that we would be able to continue and not completely stress out. So we were the very definition of hectic hosts. So as I mentioned, I've been following you for years in this podcast, and I got an email from you probably, I don't know, August of last year, and it was about the Legends X 90-day accelerator and how you were having a training for the webinar. And it there's something about it that really spoke to me. And I believe the name of that webinar, correct me if I'm wrong, was how to go from hectic host to $1 million manager. And we wanted to be $1 million managers, but we had absolutely no idea how to do it. And so we jumped on that training. We had a ton of ahas. It was as if that training was designed exactly for us in our situation. And so we knew that we needed to take it to the next level. We set up a call with Eric, and we signed up for the Legends X 90-day accelerator right away. And we had started, let's see, last year, September 7th, I believe, was the first class. And then we just wrapped up this past December. And I know that we're going to get into sort of the changes and everything that happened as a result of going through that program, but it was a complete game changer for our business. Not only everything that we implemented from our business, but just a total paradigm shift into conditioning us to have a CEO mindset, to be able to look at our business and start delegating out tasks that we were once prisoners of, being stuck in our business in these reactive tasks. So once we realized that that's the way that we needed to move forward, that framework, it changed everything. And so now as we're growing and we're adding new properties, we can do it without being stressed out and without, going crazy and losing our minds. So again, it's not an exaggeration to say that this program completely changed everything in our business, Jasper.
Man, that sounds really awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. And you have a really interesting story as well, like, going all the way back to, I think it was like the snowbirds, that's what they call them, right? The snowbirds who come to Florida in the summer.
That's right.
Yeah, developing that business and then eventually ending up with Airbnb. And just to give some explanation to the listeners of what, how do we come up with hectic host and what does that mean? So Eric and I realized, like, through our coaching programs, that everyone seems to go through the same stages, right? Like I think there's two ways that people get into Airbnb. Number one is what we call the traditional host, is the person who starts renting out their own home or a room in their home and, has one listing and just kind of organically, just as a way to make a little bit of extra money, just start hosting on Airbnb. And then some people, and I think you're more in this category, they start out as what we call the side hustle host, where it's like you recognize there's an opportunity to make money with Airbnb. It's not necessarily your own home or your own room that you're renting out. It's not like a hobby. Like you immediately see the business opportunity, and then you start kind of taking on some units without having a real plan. And before you know it, that little side hustle starts consuming your entire life, right? Because like Airbnb is like a 24-hour business. And it never stops, right? There's always something going on, especially when you grow to over 5 units. Like it's usually like we have like 2 or 3. It's usually somewhat manageable. But what we see is like the people that either start as a traditional host or a side hustle host, they eventually move into that hectic host stage, where then that's where most people get stuck on their journey of growing like a real business, like with a brand and a vision and a plan and systems and team members. Usually people get stuck in that sort of 5 to 10 property range, where they're used to operate from memory, and that works when you have 2 units or 3 units, right? But 5, 6, 7, 8, you're starting to run into these challenges that you were describing. And we were talking another day where you said to me that you felt like you were like a headless chicken running around and kind of driving yourself crazy. And I asked you, like, well, if, would you be able to continue? How long would you be able to continue that life where you're constantly having these challenges and you are like, oh, I wouldn't be able to do that. Right, I wouldn't be able to continue.
Hey, Jasper, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Oh, did I cut out?
Sorry, you just dropped out for a second, Jasper. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. I'll start over, and our editor will cut this out. Um, what was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about how it was a headless chicken and how we were
Oh
talking
yeah,
about will I be
yeah,
able to continue?
yeah. So we were talking a few days earlier, and you described it really well when you said to me, I felt like I was a headless chicken running around like crazy, and I asked you like, well, would you have been able to continue this business, or for how long would you have been able to continue this business, operating that way? And you were like, oh, you were shaking your head, and you were like, I wouldn't have been able to continue for very long because it's just like affecting, my life. It's affecting my health. It's affecting everything, right? So I recognize that, that's really the exact person that Eric and I had in mind when we designed the Legends X program. So it's really interesting to hear from you that you felt like we were speaking directly to you with that training. And by the way, we have another training coming up in a few weeks or so for everybody, which is a free training that's going to be similar to what we've done before. But we are always like improving these trainings. As every time we go through Legends X, we learn from people like yourself. We learn more about the challenges, and then we try to improve our training. So anyway, if you're on our email list, you'll get notified for the training, just like Matt received an email from us in August. But yeah, so that's the stage where you were at when you joined Legends X, right? The hectic host stage. Now the next,
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that the next stage that we kind of recognize is like the rising star. That's the stage where you still have about the same amount of units, maybe a little bit more, but the difference is that now you're starting to shift the mindset from being a business manager to being a business owner. So you start to understand like, okay, I can't be doing all these tasks myself. I have to hire team members. And in order to hire team members, we have to have systems, because otherwise all the knowledge and what we're doing is in my head. So how can I hire somebody, if we don't have a process in place or a system that they can use to perform these tasks, right? So that's what we really focus on Legends X. Then once you have that in place, it feels like now you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You have some confidence, and you start really like step by step taking yourself out of the business. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. That's a process. It takes some time to build these systems. But even like taking yourself out of the business like 10-20% already feels really good, because then you start to see like, okay, this is something that we can work with and we can grow our company in the future. And then the last stage, the fifth stage, is what we call the legends, right? These are people that we have in our STR Legends mastermind, where we recognize like, wow, these people are managing 50, 100, 200, 300 listings, but they're not actually doing a lot of the work themselves, right? They're just focused on the vision of the company. They're focused on the partnerships, hiring team members, but they don't really get involved in the day-to-day. So that's a long, a long paragraph, a long story, but just wanted to explain kind of like the different stages, and so now let's talk about how did you go from that hectic host stage to the rising star stage? What were the most important steps that you took during the Legends X program and beyond, and then the last month?
Yeah, sure. So I think the most important thing, and there's a lot of things about the program that are really mind-blowing. And I think I mentioned to you in one of our conversations that the paradigm shift for me really was this idea of the franchise prototype. If anyone's familiar with the E-Myth book, if you haven't read it, I would highly suggest you read that. That was something about a couple of weeks into the program that Eric had mentioned in passing in one of the trainings that I decided to just devour. And this idea that we start to observe our business as if we intend to franchise it, that franchise businesses are the most successful type of business models. If you look at 75% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years, and you look at 80% of franchise business models succeed, well, there's a reason for this. So every owner starts their business with a dream, and what Legends X does is helps you achieve that dream by implementing a framework. And that framework is the vision, operations, and scale. So the most important thing for me, one of the most important things for me was just having that vision of where we wanted to go with our business. What did we want our business to look like? How big did we want our business to grow? As I mentioned in my story, we were hectic hosts, but even in the side hustle hosts, just taking on any property that would come our way. We wanted quantity. We weren't even thinking about dialing in a certain avatar or a vision of who we really wanted to work with. Only until we started going through the course very quickly, like a month in for what starts out with the vision of the VOS system, we realized that we wanted to be in the luxury market. It was the same amount of time for a lot less work and more profit, more revenue. So for us, dialing in that vision, making sure that we understood that who do we want to serve, why do we want to serve them, and how are we going to serve them at a high level. And because I had my concierge background of really understanding how to over deliver, we learned through Legends X how to really understand who we wanted to go after, and now we're focused on this luxury market, and so we're actually working with clients that we enjoy working with and creating that avatar for the guests that you want to serve. Now Bruna and I understand that who we enjoy serving the most on the guest level are people just like us that are traveling around, that want really high level accommodations. That's kind of how we learned and changed our paradigm to who do we really want to serve and how do we really want to serve them. So that vision really helps you understand, and then you bring in the operations and the systems, which we could have a whole conversation about the playbook, your standard operating procedures. You touched on this briefly, how to take everything that's in your brain, everything that you have by memory, and now getting it down somewhere so that you can start to delegate those things out, those reactive tasks that once buried us and had me running around like a headless chicken. Now we can step out from there because we have everything documented, and we can start to delegate that out to people, which we implemented right away. We brought on through your ultimate hiring system, which there's just so many things that we could talk about. We're going to have another conversation, but just to kind of stay on track here, the ultimate hiring system made us understand that we could bring in these key people, these snipers, as we call them, not generalists, but people that really are focused on what our mission is. And we brought on 5 new co-hosts during the program based on your ultimate hiring template. And so we implemented that immediately, and just that alone, Jasper, just that alone, bringing in 5 extra people now in our business meant that Bruna and I could take a step back, and we could have these new co-hosts take care of now guest communication. They could take care of the writing reviews. They could take care of the quality control at our properties. There's properties now that we don't even visit, haven't been to in months because we've got the right team in place. So I know I went on and on more than I should have with what your question was, but it's so hard to be specific as to how this changed our paradigm. But there's so many things about this program, from the vision, operations, and scale, that once you have the vision and the operations dialed in, then you can start to scale your business and do it in a correct way. And you're not running around, doing these meaningless tasks that once kept us prisoners in our business.
Yeah, no, I think you're touching on the really the foundational differences almost, between that hectic host and what we call the rising star. Where if I would ask you now, like, how many with your systems and your team members and your strategy and being out of the business more yourself and your vision, like how many units do you think you could manage?
Well, our goal is to have hundreds of units, And I think that the idea of what you're teaching here means that if we can create continuity and have these systems and replicate these systems through that franchise business model, ideally you can just take that same system that works for 5 properties and you can take that out to hundreds of properties. And that's the other great thing about this program is you have the visions, operations, and the scale and the framework, but you also have a network of people that are just like you, that are dealing with the day-to-days of their businesses. And some people in Legends X have 1 property with visions of scaling much, much bigger. And some people have, 50, hundreds of properties, if you look at the mastermind group. So you can take this framework and that you can scale to whatever level you want, because there isn't a certain level that the program says you need to be at this level. It's whatever you want to vision. What is your ultimate vision? What do you want to grow to? Whatever you want to grow to, you'll have that framework and you'll have that system to implement. And then you'll have that community of people that you can interact with in the course during the 90 days. Like I told you before, we were 2 weeks into the course. Someone had reached out, a property owner, and had asked a question, and I wanted your feedback. We've got 7-figure hosts with experience like you, Eric, and Julie, that we can reach out to anytime we want through our communication channel in Slack and ask you a question, and you're going to get back to us. And you and Julie addressed a concern that I had that helped me close 2 properties that brought in, Bruna and I were talking, brought in an additional $24,000 a month, because these properties, one of them is an Airbnb plus property and another one is just a really luxury mountain resort type accommodation. And my point is that you get that community that you have access to, so you can scale it to whatever size you want, because there's somebody in the community that's going to know exactly how to get to that point, because you can just model what they did. And I think that's one of the other things that is so great about it, is that accountability. Every week that you're going to have to take care of all of the action steps that's in this program. This isn't just a course that helps you list on Airbnb and make money. This is a complete CEO, business in a box, how to now become the manager and run your business like a CEO, and then have that community behind you to support you with any questions that you have. On top of the 3 of you, Eric and Julie and you, we also have a group of masterminds that can also help you achieve that too.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't even spoken about. Other than the course materials, is community, and we can learn a lot from each other. I mean, it's really great to hear that our advice was useful for you, but you learn from other students as well, right? Because that's something that Eric and I realized over time as well, and Judy, is that like we're all experts, and we can all learn from each other. So just being part of that community, I think, is really important, because like you said, any question, any challenge, any problem you encounter, someone's been in your shoes, right? And it's just so much more effective if you can just ask that person versus trying to figure everything out by yourself. And also, I really like that you mentioned, business in the box, because that's kind of like what Eric and I had in mind when we started creating this program too. Is like we both really like the movie The Founder. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Yeah. And you remember how they laid out, like they made like almost like a mega painting of what the floor should look like which machines should be where. Like they were literally like figuring out like what is the best system to produce a burger, but not to just produce one burger, but to like produce the exact same burger no matter who's performing the tasks.
Exactly.
And that's what Eric and I were thinking when we started building this program. We're like, what if we can build something that's like a system like McDonald's, like where we can give our students the systems that no matter who performs the task, like the result is always going to be the same. And that way people can scale their business, right? So that's kind of what we had in mind when we started doing this.
Right, to have that continuity. And there's an example in the E-Myth book that the author gives of going to get a haircut, and he goes in to get a haircut, and he says that someone came with a warm towel and someone gave him a nice drink by his side, and they used the clippers to cut the scissors to cut his hair, and that made him feel really comfortable and well cared for and taken care of. And then he noticed that the second time that he came in, that there was no warm towel, that the drink wasn't quite as hot as it was the first time, and he didn't quite feel as cared for. And instead of using the scissors, the barber used the clippers. And so if you don't have any continuity, if you don't have that same process, regardless of who's there, it's going to be a different customer experience. So you have to make sure that no matter who's coming in, you've got to be able to delegate that. And that's why that playbook is the biggest difference. I mean, in Legends X alone, there's so many things that stand alone in this that would make it worth the price of admission. But just having that one resource, you provide more than 40 templates that people can just copy and paste right into their own playbook. So having somebody bringing that franchise model like you're talking about from the movie Founder is exactly what you guys have done for the short-term rental industry. So you could take the same framework and implement it in any business. But the way that you've done it is specific to short-term rentals. So anybody that wants to scale to, if you just want to stay with 10, 15, 20 properties, you can use this and you'll be successful. And you'll not only be successful, but you'll also be happier. You'll be less stressed. You won't be running around like a chicken with your head cut off, like I was. And that's the key. That's why we have our business, so that we can be happy and enjoy our personal life, and we're not completely owned by our business. I mean, that's how the most successful businesses, in McDonald's, although you might have different opinions about the food quality or whatever, and whether or not fast food's for you, but if you take that template and if you take that, what they've done and how they've copied that and franchised that out, that's exactly what you're all doing with this curriculum, which makes it, for me, a curriculum that enables someone to achieve financial success by building a short-term rental hospitality brand. And that part, building a brand, is really what I didn't realize I was going to get so much out of the course, although it was clear. That part, building that brand and that system, so that maybe we want to take the B&B way international. Maybe we want to open it up and have business and be the preeminent short-term rental specialists all over the world. We would be able to do it with what we have here, with what we learned from Legends X. And that's not hyperbole. That's a fact that's what you get out of this. And we got that, and we got so much more just with the networking and everything. So what you guys have put together here is first rate.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate that. And you touched on something that I think is also really important is, and Eric and I were talking about this just a couple of days ago, actually, is in the end of the day, we want to have our goals with our business. We want to have our vision, but at the end of the day, we also want to enjoy our lives, right? Because what's the point like running a business and growing it if you're not enjoying it? Right. And that's a really important point too, because what we notice as well is a lot of people that are drawn to Airbnb, they love the idea of hospitality, right? They typically have some type of hospitality background, and we all love hospitality because we're connecting people and we're providing an experience for people, which is awesome. Like, it's accommodation. Obviously, that's a big part of people's holidays, and you're really making something cool happen for another person. But that's what we signed up for. What we didn't sign up for is not sleeping at night, or running around like that headless chicken cleaning toilets. That's not what we signed up for, right? So I think that's really, really important point as well.
Right. it needs to fit into your life and it can't run your life. And the reason that Bruna and I built our business, the B&B way, was that we get excited for providing alternative accommodations than stuffy hotels, especially with COVID. People want to stay in private accommodations with their own kitchen, with their own privacy. And so being able to provide those accommodations for people to work remotely, to work where they want, become digital nomads, and having that platform, it really is gratifying to provide these kinds of accommodations. And there's something in our DNA, all of us in this community, where we really enjoy that feeling of offering this kind of accommodation for people. That's why this concierge model, and why I thought it was important for your audience to hear my story, and that I got trained to understand how to go above and beyond for people, to treat them like family members. Before we tell our staff that before anybody comes in to stay at our accommodations, you need to present that place as if it were for a close family member or for a friend. How would you leave it? Would there be fresh cut flowers? Would there be a nice bottle of wine? Would there be chocolates? Depending on the accommodation, you can cater that. But it's very important to understand that what we're doing is a really special thing. We're making people have a home away from home. And I think that is something, we're not just in this business to make a bunch of money. I think that's a byproduct, but really caring about human beings and also helping property owners transform their homes into 5-star vacation rentals. I think this is going to be like the thing going forward. And that's another thing that's extremely gratifying for these homeowners to get these reviews, to see these guest reviews coming in. It's really gratifying for them. So it really is, it's something that it hits in so many areas and it's gratifying on so many levels. And that's why I want to grow this to as big as we can grow it. And now we've got the framework to do it.
Yeah, and that's the last thing I want to touch on, actually. You mentioned it a little bit, but I would love to understand a little bit what does the next 1 to 5 years look like for the B&B way?
Well, we want to keep using the framework that we learned with Legends X program, keep networking with the group and leveraging the rising stars. Now that we are into this new rising star category, there's new challenges at these levels that we love to meet and implement and grow even larger team. Now we've got a DNA of what snipers we're looking for. And so we're going to take that and we're going to duplicate it and keep adding properties. We're in the process of adding another 2 properties. We added 2 during the Legends X program. We're adding 2 more. And now we're able to have fun and really enjoy the process and get busy building systems. So it's just constantly building systems and then networking and realizing that there's new challenges at every level and learning from those that are in the rising star community. What's possible. They give you the imagination to dream bigger, to realize, wait a minute, I think that what we want to do is build a treehouse community. We want to take and build. My wife and I have this thing with tree houses. Maybe it goes back from when I was a kid, but I've always loved tree houses. And so our goal is to provide those specialty accommodations here in Costa Rica, and in Western North Carolina is such a special place here in the Appalachians. But focusing here and then going down and doing that and duplicating that in Costa Rica, and then having boutique hotels. I don't know that I would have really necessarily dreamt that big if I didn't see other people in the community talking about it. So what that did was it made me realize, oh, okay, so these guys are doing it. Then this gets me motivated to realize that we can do it too. So for the next 5 years, that's really our plan, is to roll out these specialty accommodations, maybe Airstreams, maybe little Hobbit hovels. Those kinds of things are very popular and gaining more popularity on Airbnb and all the rental platforms. But that's the goal for the next 5 years, is to really dial in and get focused on our treehouse community and continue implementing our systems and growing and adding new team members and just, multiplying this by 100 and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love the bigger vision. Just to close off this podcast on that note, one of the people that inspired me the most in my life is Steve Jobs. I don't know if you've seen that commencement speech at Stanford that he did.
Yeah, you just sent out an email about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really had a big impact on me, and specifically when he said that, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said a couple of things. Number one is like, the only people that change the world are the ones that are crazy enough to believe they can, which I thought was really interesting. And then number two, he said, it's at some point you realize that the people that you look up to who have achieved incredible things are actually no smarter than yourself.
Exactly.
Right. And it just like kind of, you could, when you realize that, you're like, oh, hold on a second. Like I might be able to accomplish something much bigger than I thought, So oftentimes we're putting in like a glass ceiling above ourselves almost, right? That kind of limits us. So yeah, I love that you're dreaming big. I'm sure you're gonna accomplish a lot. So I'm excited to have you in our community and keep following your journey.
I appreciate it, and thanks for all of the valuable content. When I was trying to figure this out, and through trial and error, it was content like what you put out for free for people that really interested me. And how long did I follow you? I don't know, at least 5 years. And then I saw that one email that just did it. So you never know who you're going to reach. You never know which email it's going to be. So thank you for putting out all such generous content, not just in the short-term rental industry, but for just self-empowerment, for content like sending out the Steve Jobs commencement. Maybe somebody needed to hear that day. And that made them take a risk, and that made them do something that made them a little bit fearful and jump out of their comfort zone, because that's where the magic happens, is jumping out of your comfort zone. And being with this community and people like you that are doing things at a higher level. It just makes us realize that we can dream there too, and we can do it. And so, thank you guys for doing that, and thank you for putting together this program, and your mission is one that I align with, and I'm very excited about what the future holds with overnight success and everything that you guys are doing, and rising stars, and then heading on to, as Bruna and I grow into the legend status.
Yes, that'd be awesome to have you in the STR Legends Mastermind, which we are almost like version 3 launching this year with the live events again. So we'll update everybody on that as well in the next few weeks. But yeah, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate your time. We've been talking for quite a while now. We could be talking for hours, I'm sure. But just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for being like one of our star students in the program, and just really taking everything that we were teaching and putting it into making it into a reality with your business, the B&B way. And just to wrap up this podcast, I've already said that a couple of times, but let people know where they can find you if they want to stay in North Carolina.
Sure. You can go to thebnbway.com, THEBNBway.com. You can see some of our accommodations there. You can also follow us on Instagram at the B&B Way. We're there. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. It's so awesome when you actually get to be a part of something that you've been a fan of.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I didn't know you've been listening for so long.
Yeah, imagine how many other people that are like that are you don't realize that are out there. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Sweet, man. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Matt. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. And on Friday, Eric and I will be back with another episode. So have a great week, and we'll see you soon.